I started driving 7 years ago, and back then I didn't know much about cars or driving, but I always knew that I wanted to learn how to drive properly to become a safe, responsible, and a good driver. So I thought it was going to be a great idea to film a video about the things I wish I knew when I was just starting out driving. And let's get right into it. First of all, we need to develop the right mindset. If you're watching this, you're probably young, and that means you're naturally more risk-taking than, let's say, a more experienced person. That's why a lot of new and young drivers develop their own mindset from the very beginning. And I always remember what my dad used to tell me. Cars are weapons. I mean, literally, cars are actual weapons. I'm not trying to scare you off, but you need to understand that we are driving on public roads with other people. So we have lots of responsibility for our safety and for the safety of people around us. We also need to understand that our higher risk tolerance doesn't mean we become a better driver instantly. And there's another end of the spectrum. Some young drivers are too afraid to drive at first. So our job is to have a mindset somewhere in the middle. We don't want to be too afraid to drive, and there's a simple reason for it. We know that we control our car. Our car only does things that we tell it to do. And we can take appropriate measures to reduce risk while driving and to actually be safe. But we don't want to be overconfident as well, to do some stupid stuff on the road, which you think you can do, but you lack experience or seating time for it. And again, I'm not trying to scare you off. I'm a driving enthusiast. I enjoy driving. And I was in your shoes at one point. So I just want you to understand that with time and experience, you're going to get more confident and more confident and more confident. And as you get more experience, you will enjoy it more. I promise. And the next thing that I wish I knew when I started driving is cost of owning a car. Before you get into driving, you need to understand what are the running costs of owning a vehicle. New cars are insanely expensive right now. The average price of a new car nowadays is more than $40,000 US. And this is just a face value, a purchase price. It doesn't even include the ongoing costs of owning a vehicle. So let's actually talk about those costs. First is maintenance. You have to maintain your car, which means you have to change oil, you have to replace tires, sometimes you even need to replace your wipers. So you will need to plan your budget monthly for servicing your car. And it will widely depend on the vehicle you're driving. Of course, if you choose a luxury car, you're going to pay more. And if you choose an economy car, you're going to pay less. You know the drill. The next bill you're going to pay monthly is fuel or electricity, depending if you have an internal combustion car or an EV. And pretty much everywhere in North America, fuel prices and electricity prices are going upwards, not downwards. So you have to account for that as well. The next thing that most people forget about is insurance. If you get a more expensive car, you'll pay more for insurance. There's lots of factors that determine your premium for your car insurance. It will depend on your experience, your accident history, and the car you're driving. So you have to consider all of these factors as well. And one of the most hidden and forgotten costs is depreciation. All cars are depreciating differently. They have different depreciation curves. So it's your responsibility to do your research and find out how much is going to depreciate over the time of your future ownership. So in other words, you want to make sure you are in a good financial position to buy a car that you will drive for the first time. And to be honest, even though I'm driving for 7 years now, I only got my own car for my own money just a year ago. Before that, I was driving my family cars, like my dad's cars, or I was using car sharing services. Because I couldn't justify spending that much money, not just on the car itself, but on the monthly ongoing costs. For young people living in North America and actually living anywhere in the world, cost of living doesn't become cheaper every day. And there's so many other financial goals we want to hit. Many of us want to save up for their own house. You probably pay rent of some sort, you probably want to travel as well. And if you have any other hobbies, you probably want to spend money there as well. So definitely don't feel like you're missing out on anything. We're all in the same boat. And I think now we're ready to discuss the third thing I wish I knew when I was starting out, which is how to develop your driving skills. The first thing you have to do, of course, is to go to a dedicated driving school that will explain and teach you about all of the rules you have to follow on the road in your local area. And after you go to a driving school, you get your license, I recommend to you to drive more with more experienced family members or friends. Just ask them any general advice you have for your driving, and maybe just take them somewhere and ask them to critique your driving after you finish. So later on your own, you can actually focus on some things that you got critiqued on. The third thing that I would recommend to you is to watch some driving tutorials on YouTube, just like this one. And if you go through the catalog of my YouTube channel, you can find lots of videos on how to drive better. And I'm not the only channel out here. Mick Drives Cars, Conquer Driving, Tedward, and many more YouTubers that actually give a very good advice on how to become a better, safer, and a more responsible driver. And the great thing about YouTube and the channels I mentioned to you earlier is that they not only focus on the teaching aspect, but they actually entertain you and they tell about why driving is enjoyable. The other good tip for you to actually learn how to become a better driver faster is to start with a slower and less expensive vehicle. First of all, if your car is not very powerful, it is so easy to find the limits of that car and actually understand what driving is all about. And since it's going to be less expensive, you're going to enjoy it more financially, and you're not going to worry too much about scratching your car and be afraid as much of making a damage to your car. When people just starting out driving, it is not a surprise for me at least when you scratch your car somewhere or you put a dent while you were parking. It happens, and that's why it is better to do it in a cheaper car, which you won't care for as much as you would do if you bought a new car that costs 35 or 40,000 bucks. The next thing you should do is to practice in all different conditions. You need to know how to drive in the morning, afternoon, night, in the snow, in the rain, in heavy traffic. You need to be prepared for all of these conditions. And to be prepared for these conditions, apart from getting knowledge, is to actually practice and get more seating time. So whenever you have a chance to drive in the rain, for example, just go out there and don't be afraid to learn. Because the worst thing happens when people are avoiding situations like driving in the rain, for example, and when they do have to drive in the rain, they get in a very nasty situation just because they haven't taken time to practice properly in this particular conditions. And the last thing I wished I knew when I was getting into driving is how to choose your first car. And the first thing you have to think about is your budget. Budget will vary from person to person. We all have different financial abilities. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, you don't want to go for a very expensive car because you want to learn in a slower, less expensive car. So set up your budget. If it's less than 20,000 bucks, you're probably going to be looking at a used option because as we know, new cars start over 20,000 bucks nowadays. And when you are choosing your first car, I highly recommend to you to prioritize reliability and safety. You don't want to be dealing with repairs or being stranded on the road when you get your first car because you want to get as much of seating time as possible, right? Without any interruptions. So that is why I always tell people to find a Japanese car, probably a Mazda, Toyota, or Honda, which is well maintained and in your budget. But Savvy, I'm looking at your steering wheel and it says Volkswagen. Why is your first car a German one while you telling me to get a Japanese car? If you're not a car nerd like me, who will go on forums and search for a car for hours and hours and hours, I just recommend to you to search for a Toyota, Honda, or Mazda. Because this car is actually very, very reliable. It is a 2012 Volkswagen Jetta, which you can watch a video about right here. But you have to actually spend so much time for research and know a lot about cars to kind of find a deal like this. It is just much simpler to go for a Japanese car at that point. So just remember, even though I told you that new cars are very expensive, and they are, it doesn't mean you have to go for a new car. Again, you can go to a used market, and used market is kind of a long game. It is hard at first to find a car that you want, but if you search hard enough, you will find a hidden gem you were looking for. For example, I was searching for this car for 2 months, and when it showed up in my area, I went to the dealership the same day and I bought it. So it is definitely possible. First, you need to develop the right mindset. Secondly, you need to understand the cost of owning a car. Thirdly, you need to focus on developing your driving skills. And lastly, you have to choose the right first car. And actually, one last thing. Enjoy driving while you can. With the rapid development of technologies, we're probably going to be replaced by self-driving cars in 10 or 20 years, in my opinion. So take this opportunity and time to enjoy driving and have fun. If you're new to driving, I wish this video is going to be very helpful to you and help you to develop this right mindset. Trust me, we need more better drivers on our roads. And if you're watching this video, congratulations, you're on the right path already. And I assure you, you're going to become a good driver. And I actually want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. What is the biggest challenge you have so far? And if you want to develop your skills further, you should watch this video about how to be a smooth driver. And you should watch this video on the right about how to be more confident when you're driving in the city. As always, stay safe out there, keep enjoying the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.